Why is it that the loudest people in society often get the most attention, yet the quietest ones often command the deepest respect? In today's world of oversharing and endless noise, could it be that silence, not shouting, is the ultimate form of power? We're told to speak up, to earn respect, but what if true strength lies in saying less, walking away, and letting your presence, not your words, do the talking? Welcome to StoicCraft, where we uncover the timeless wisdom of Stoicism and show how it can transform modern challenges into opportunities for strength, clarity, and respect. Respect doesn't vanish the moment someone disrespects you. It only disappears when you allow their treatment to define your worth. The hard truth is this: people rarely disrespect you simply because they're loud. Often it's because you remain quiet when your voice should have been firm. But silence, when wielded with wisdom, is not a weakness. It can be your strongest ally, a way to reclaim your self-worth through presence, unspoken boundaries, and the courage to say no to what isn't deserved. This isn't about teaching you how to win arguments. It's about showing you how to command respect without raising your voice. In this journey, I'll share 8 transformative shifts that will forever change how people see you, speak to you, and treat you. Once you understand them, disrespect will no longer have a place in your life. I once believed silence meant peace, but I came to see how it can also mean surrender. Respect isn't taken by force, nor is it demanded with volume. It is quietly cultivated through self-respect and unshakable boundaries. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And that reaction begins with understanding the subtle ways disrespect first enters your life. It doesn't always storm in with raised voices or outright insults. Often it seeps in quietly through the overlooked comments, the cutting jokes, masked as humor, the small dismissals that others brush aside. It's not only about what others do, it's about what you silently allow. And here lies the crucial distinction. There is silence born from fear, and there is silence born from strength. Fearful silence teaches others that you've forgotten your worth. It whispers, "I'll tolerate this," even when your heart tells you otherwise. Every time you let someone speak over you, reduce your efforts to a sarcastic punchline, or demand from you without giving back, you're training them on how to treat you. And when you smile while hiding your discomfort, you're not preserving peace, you're giving them permission to continue. Seneca warned us, "No man is despised by another unless he first despises himself." Respect doesn't begin with how the world treats you. It begins with the invisible lines you draw for yourself, lines you defend not with shouting, but with quiet certainty. These are not grand declarations. They are the silent contracts you make with your dignity, and when those lines are ignored, the consequences build quietly. Like water carving into stone, the small acts of dismissal erode your identity over time. One day you wake up and barely recognize the reflection staring back at you. Perhaps it's the coworker who constantly interrupts, the friend whose compliments always cut with hidden barbs, or the partner who raises their voice one too many times. You brushed it off, telling yourself, "It's not that serious." But each moment of dismissal takes something from you. This is where Stoicism comes alive. True self-respect isn't about dominating others. It is about holding firm to boundaries rooted in self-worth. It's the unspoken no that resonates louder than an argument. It's found in your steady eyes, your calm posture, and in the way you carry yourself without apology. That silent strength echoes further than any raised voice ever could. Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And in that simple truth lies a lesson we often forget. In today's world, we equate respect with being the loudest in the room, with asserting dominance, or with endlessly proving ourselves. Yet we overlook something far more subtle and powerful, the quiet strength of presence. When you walk into a room grounded in calm conviction, without the desperate need to prove, justify, or explain, you shift the atmosphere. You don't need to shout when your standards are clear. You don't need to chase admiration when you've stopped shrinking yourself just to fit in. Respect begins to surround you, not because of the words you speak, but because of the way you carry yourself. So what builds this invisible wall of dignity? It is self-regard nurtured not by ego, but through conscious daily choices. The ego shouts, "I'm better than you," but genuine self-worth calmly whispers, "I don't need your approval to be whole." That is not arrogance, it is freedom, and freedom is magnetic. People feel it without you having to announce it. Epictetus put it plainly, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." When you begin living from inner clarity rather than the shaky ground of outside validation, something changes. Others sense your boundaries. They recognize your quiet strength, even if you never raise your voice. If you're wondering how to begin, start small. Speak once, then stop. Resist the urge to over-explain. Hold your gaze a little longer when someone challenges you. Decline with grace when something violates your peace. And perhaps the most powerful of all, learn to walk away when someone consistently refuses to see your value. You're not punishing them. You're protecting yourself. Let me be clear. This isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about becoming deeply attuned to your worth and living as if it were undeniable. That is the heart of Stoicism. Not retreating from life, but engaging with it on your terms. Guided by integrity and self-respect, you and I live in a world filled with endless noise, opinions, judgments, and performances. Yet silence, when chosen from strength, speaks a language louder than any speech. When you embody these Stoic principles, people notice. They may not even know why they respect you, but they do, because respect earned silently is the only kind that endures. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply exists, steady and unshakable. So let's talk about silence, not the awkward, avoidant kind that comes from fear, but the commanding silence that radiates from self-respect. Have you ever had someone try to rattle you in a meeting, throwing out a sarcastic jab to make you stumble? Most people either laugh along uncomfortably or snap back defensively. But Stoicism offers another way. Imagine instead that you respond with nothing but calm presence. You meet their eyes not with anger, not with forced politeness, but with steady composure. Suddenly the dynamic shifts. The room feels it. Silence becomes your strength. You see, toxic people thrive on reaction. They poke and prod, hoping you'll defend, explain, or retaliate. But when you remain unmoved, their strategy collapses. It's as if they're playing a game, waiting for you to grab the controller, only you never do. And just like that, the game ends. Let me share a real story. A friend of mine, a senior manager in a tech firm, faced this exact challenge. One of her team members repeatedly undermined her in meetings with passive-aggressive remarks. Everyone expected her to fight back, but one day she simply stopped. After yet another jab, she lifted her head, held eye contact, and said nothing. The silence stretched. The energy in the room shifted. The team members stumbled, unsure of what to do, and quickly moved on. After the meeting, several colleagues quietly praised her restraint. That single moment of calm strength earned her more respect than any sharp rebuttal could have done. In that silence, something profound happened. She didn't just avoid conflict, she held up a mirror. Her quiet strength reflected the other person's behavior back at them, exposing their pettiness without a single word. They had to sit in it, feel it, and confront it. Because when there was no emotional reaction to feed on, they were forced to face themselves. That's the essence of psychological dominance in Stoicism, not to crush or humiliate others, but to interrupt their toxic games and force them to reflect. It's not about winning some imaginary contest. It's about not losing yourself. Why does silence work so powerfully? Because we live in a world consumed by noise. Everyone talks. Everyone reacts. Few pause. Fewer still listen. And when you are the one who doesn't scramble to fill the space, you stand out not because you're louder, but because you're grounded. As the Stoics taught, he who is brave is free. And in our modern world, courage often doesn't mean charging forward. It means restraint. It's not always what you say, it's what you don't say that reveals your true strength. So let me ask you this. What would change if the next time someone disrespected you, you didn't shrink or retaliate, but simply held your space with quiet confidence? What would it feel like if, instead of fueling the fire, you became the calm center of the storm? Silence doesn't mean backing down. It means stepping up internally, choosing to protect your peace and project your worth without wasting energy. It's a signal to the world. I don't need to explain myself to be valid. That is the heart of Stoicism, remaining centered, clear, and calm, no matter what unfolds around you. Of course, living this way takes practice, but once you begin, people feel the shift. You stop bending yourself to earn approval. You stop shrinking in order to belong. Instead, you stand tall in dignity, and others adjust. The beauty of it is that this transformation is subtle, yet incredibly powerful. The loudest presence in the room is rarely the one shouting. It's the one who knows who they are and refuses to compromise that truth. That's how you earn respect silently. Not because you demanded it, but because others can't help. But feel it. Let your silence speak for you. Let your calm become your authority. Let Stoic principles shape not just how others perceive you, but the person you actually become. Because here's the truth. Silence often speaks louder than words. If you've ever responded with calm silence instead of reacting, you already know it's a power move. Sometimes saying nothing is saying everything. Respect isn't earned by pleading for it. It's earned by being the kind of person who makes disrespect feel out of place. That's a timeless Stoic principle. People on the Stoic path don't beg for respect. They embody it. Their discipline, consistency, and quiet presence do the talking. When you live this way, crossing your boundaries comes at a cost, not through drama, but through your clarity. Think about those people whose calmness makes you pause before speaking carelessly. That's the unspoken contract of self-respect. When you embody it, others feel it. Instinctively, they know that to disregard you is to risk losing access to your space. The truth is, you don't need to confront every small act of disrespect. What you do need is to become the kind of person whose very presence discourages repetition. And that transformation doesn't happen overnight. It comes from choosing to respect yourself first, by not over-explaining your standards, by not apologizing for having expectations, and by never begging for recognition. When you enter a room, grounded in your worth, people adjust. They become more thoughtful, more careful, more respectful. Why? Because they can sense your boundaries, silent, strong, unshakable. I once mentored a young entrepreneur who constantly felt drained after meetings. People don't listen, he told me. They talk over me, they ignore my ideas. I asked him one simple question. Do you respect your own voice enough not to beg others to hear it? The next month, he stopped undercutting himself. He stopped over-explaining. He stopped pleasing. And something remarkable happened. People started listening. Not because he became louder or more aggressive, but because he became rooted. His quiet self-respect shifted the dynamic. This is the psychological power of self-respect. When you live with it, others either rise to meet your standard or they remove themselves from your space. Either way, you win peace. Think about that. No more exhausting yourself managing everyone's moods. No more tolerating half-hearted behavior. When someone interrupts or dismisses you, and you choose not to engage, that's not weakness. That's you setting a new standard. So ask yourself, what kind of energy are you bringing into the room? Are you craving to be liked, or are you quietly standing firm in your values, letting others decide if they belong in your space? Remember, there's a vast difference between ego and self-respect. Ego craves control. Ego needs to win. Self-respect has nothing to prove. It doesn't seek to dominate. It's simply rooted in knowing you will not lower yourself for anyone. You're not here to fight for validation. You're here to live fully, with peace and clarity. That's the silent contract you write with the world. That's what keeps your identity intact in the face of repeated disrespect. In the end, self-respect doesn't make you loud. It makes you magnetic. And that's the quiet power Stoicism offers, not once, not occasionally, but every single day. People often say that power is loud, that it demands attention, dominates rooms, and silences others with force. But living and studying Stoic philosophy has shown me something profoundly different. Real power isn't about noise. Real power is silent. It is calm. It's the steady flame that refuses to flicker no matter how hard the winds blow. If you've ever wondered why some people walk into a room and command respect without raising their voice, the answer lies in what I call one of the greatest Stoic secrets, the strength of stillness. Let me paint you a picture you've probably seen. You're in a meeting and someone fires off a passive-aggressive jab. Well, we all know who's been slacking this quarter. The air in the room thickens. Everyone braces for the drama, waiting for the confrontation. But instead of snapping back, defending yourself, or escalating, You calmly respond, "If you have constructive feedback, I'd be happy to hear it privately." Then, without missing a beat, you return to the agenda. That simple moment, that refusal to be baited, is power in its purest form. No yelling, no scrambling to justify yourself. Just calm, measured presence. Here's why it works. Emotional calm disrupts the script of those who thrive on conflict. People who provoke are counting on your outrage, your excuses, or your overreaction to fuel their game. When you withhold that energy, they are left standing alone, exposed. Their behavior, once hidden behind tension and noise, becomes visible to everyone in the room and most painfully to themselves. Seneca put it wisely. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. In your calm, they lose control, and you regain it. This isn't about pretending you're unaffected. It's about emotional discipline. The person who reacts first almost always loses control, but the one who remains grounded, the one who refuses to be rushed into anger, that is the person who steers the moment. Whether you're a leader, a negotiator, a parent, or simply someone searching for peace, this principle holds true. Power belongs to the person who controls their emotions. Think about elite athletes, seasoned generals, or master negotiators. They all know this truth. The ability to stay calm under pressure isn't weakness, it's mastery. Your calm becomes the container that reshapes the energy of the entire room. And sometimes silence isn't suppression, it's precision. You're not bottling up emotions. You're choosing to channel them wisely, to reserve your energy for what truly matters. In everyday life, it works the same way. Imagine someone hurls an insult, fishing for your reaction. Instead of flaring up, you meet their words with steady eyes, a neutral tone, or perhaps no response at all. In that moment, you're not passive. You're deliberate. You're saying with your presence, "Your chaos can't touch me." That message is louder than any retort. Suddenly, the game ends. Why? Because toxic people thrive on the fuel of your reaction. When you don't play, they run out of power. Their confusion becomes your advantage. This calmness isn't just about winning one exchange, it's about not losing yourself. You stay rooted in who you are. You rise above the noise. You let others exhaust themselves with drama, while you quietly build your strength in silence. And here's what might surprise you. This is not passivity. This is strategy. It's you saying, "I won't follow your rules. I will live by mine." The person who refuses to be dragged into emotional chaos sets the standard for everyone else. And when you do finally choose to speak, your words carry the weight of wisdom instead of raw emotion. That's one of the deepest Stoic secrets. Silence, calm, and stillness aren't signs of weakness. They are the true marks of mastery. When you remain calm in the storm, you change the way you live and the way others treat you. You show people that your peace is non-negotiable, that your boundaries don't need to be shouted to exist, because they are rooted internally, not imposed externally. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. So let me ask you, what if your calm became your greatest power? What if you chose stillness instead of reaction? Who might you become if your very presence spoke louder than any words you could utter? True strength isn't something that erupts in bursts of anger or force. It's something that endures quietly. And that enduring strength is the heart of Stoicism, stillness in motion, silence that speaks volumes, quiet control that earns respect, not by force, but by becoming untouchable. I'll share something personal. There was someone I cared for deeply who once hurt me in a way I didn't deserve. Months later, they reached out with a casual text. "Hey stranger." It wasn't a heartfelt apology. It wasn't an attempt to heal. It was bait. In the past, I would have responded curious, cautious, conflicted. But this time, I didn't reply. I didn't delete the message either. I simply left it there, untouched. In doing so, I denied them the one thing they were reaching for, my attention. That silence wasn't revenge, it was closure. It was my declaration that my peace was no longer up for negotiation. This is where the true power of silence lies, in its inability to be twisted. Words can be debated, misquoted, manipulated, or even used against you, but silence is untouchable. It reflects the other person's behavior back to them without noise, without confusion, without the possibility of distortion. Once again, Marcus Aurelius' wisdom rings true. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Silence here is not retreat, it is evolution. And what happens to toxic people when they receive silence instead of drama? Internally, they panic, not with loud fear, but with quiet doubt. Why aren't they responding? Did I lose them? Did I go too far? The entire story they told themselves, the narrative that kept them feeling in control, starts to unravel. Silence doesn't destroy them. It forces them to confront themselves, often for the very first time. Let me give you an example. Anna, a woman I once coached, came to realize that many of her friends only reached out when they needed something. No appreciation, no reciprocity. She felt drained, but instead of confronting them with accusations or writing a dramatic farewell message, she simply stopped responding. She stepped back into silence. At first, they didn't notice. But over time, the absence of her presence became undeniable. Those who truly valued her returned, this time with a different tone, more respectful, more appreciative. The rest drifted away naturally. Her silence didn't punish them. It revealed the truth of the relationship. That is the essence of Stoic practice. Your silence becomes your most sacred boundary. It's the invisible line that says, I value my peace more than your validation. And that line, once drawn, cannot be crossed without consequence. Silence in this form isn't cruel. It isn't cold. It is respectful because it respects you first. And in respecting yourself, you teach others how to respect you too. So ask yourself honestly, what would happen if you stopped explaining your worth to people who only show up to test it? What would change in your life if you simply chose silence instead of pleading? That is not weakness. That is dignity. And it's one of the greatest gifts Stoicism has to offer. What would happen if your peace became more valuable than their chaos? Imagine the next time someone sends you a message carefully crafted to provoke you, you pause. You don't block. You don't respond. You simply remain still. You recognize that you don't owe anyone a scene. Sometimes the most powerful consequence isn't what you say, but the absence of access. That silence, the one they never anticipated, becomes the message that speaks the loudest dot in the end. Silence isn't only about what you withhold, it's about what you protect. It's the line you draw to remind the world that your presence is a privilege, never a guarantee. And that's where your quiet power truly begins. True strength has never come from being universally liked. It comes from being unshakable. There is an important difference between kindness and mere agreeableness. Kindness flows from inner strength. It allows you to choose empathy, generosity, and compassion, but it also knows when to walk away. Being agreeable, however, often comes from fear, the fear of being disliked. You say yes, not because it honors your truth, but because you're afraid of what will happen if you say no. And where does that path lead? To being overlooked, to being taken for granted, to being used. Maybe you know someone like this. Or maybe, if you're honest, you've been that person. Always available, always smiling, always accommodating, slowly fading into invisibility. I once worked with a woman named Maria. Everyone described her as sweet. She was the first to volunteer, the last to leave, and she never said no. At first, people seemed to appreciate her, but over time the appreciation faded. Colleagues canceled on her last minute. Some made jokes at her expense during meetings, and yet they still called her kind. The truth was, they didn't respect her. They saw her as someone who wouldn't push back. Then one day, Maria changed. Not with anger, not with a dramatic speech, but with quiet clarity. She started saying, "I'm not available," without justifying herself. She stopped explaining, stopped apologizing, stopped bending. And something remarkable happened. People began to respect her time. And more importantly, they began to respect her presence. That is the power of no. It's not rude, it's complete. As Epictetus wisely said, no person is free who is not master of himself. Every time you over-explain a boundary, you teach others that it's negotiable. But when you state it calmly, without apology, you show it is not up for debate. The shift from agreeable to unshakable begins here. Stop needing to be liked more than you want to be respected. Accept that when you stop pleasing everyone, some people will walk away. They'll say, "You've changed," and they'll be right. You have. You've stopped shrinking. Yes, you'll lose those who thrived on your silence, but you'll gain people who value your presence. That's the quiet gift of boundaries. They filter your world for truth. Have you ever noticed how the strongest people rarely raise their voices? They don't posture or demand attention. Instead, they carry themselves with quiet confidence. They help within reason. They listen deeply, but they don't tolerate disrespect. Their energy speaks before they do. That isn't arrogance, it's clarity. According to Stoic principles, it is far more powerful to be anchored in your values than to bend under pressure. That calm, grounded presence commands respect, not because you demand it, but because people instinctively adjust in its presence. They can feel that you won't bend to win approval. So let me ask you, what have you been saying yes to? Just to avoid discomfort? What boundaries have you softened simply to be liked? And what would happen if you finally said, enough? Not out of bitterness or rage, but from a place of inner peace. This isn't about becoming harsh. It isn't about being uncaring. It's about becoming real. The world doesn't respect those who mold themselves to fit the approval of others. It respects those who know their worth and refuse to shrink for anyone. You weren't born to be small. You were born to be seen, not because you're agreeable, but because you're unwavering. And in the end, that is where true respect begins. Stoicism is often misunderstood. People think it means shutting down emotions, becoming cold or unfeeling, but that's not what Stoicism is about. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being consistent. It's about knowing where you stand, holding that line with calm resolve, and allowing your presence, not endless explanations, to do the speaking for you. That's where the deepest respect is earned. Not through pleasing everyone, but through quiet, steady, unshakable strength. Have you ever wondered why some people are treated with instant respect, while others, no matter how kind, helpful, or generous, seem invisible or overlooked? I used to believe it was about being agreeable, about being the nice one. But over time, I learned one of the most powerful Stoic lessons of all. People don't treat you based on who you truly are. They treat you based on what you silently allow. Let me share a story that opened my eyes. A woman I once worked with, let's call her Lisa, was admired by everyone. She was the rock of the team. Always the first to stay late, always the one picking up slack, never the one to complain. At first, people praised her. They called her dependable, selfless, a team player. But slowly, what was once appreciated became expected. Her silence, her willingness to always say yes, trained people to believe her extra effort wasn't generosity. It was part of her role. So the day she finally said no, even gently, people were offended. Not because she was wrong, but because they had been conditioned to take her for granted. Does that sound familiar? When you don't set limits, others begin writing your role for you. And often that role leaves no space for your needs. Every time you smile through an interruption, every time you say don't worry about it when someone cancels for the 5th time, you are silently teaching them that it's acceptable. Not because they're malicious, but because people adapt, and they adapt to the boundaries you never set. Breaking this pattern starts with awareness. When you stop playing the role people have assigned you, they will push back. They'll resist. They'll question you. But that resistance is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's proof that you're shifting the dynamic. I've seen this happen not just in those I coach, but in my own life as well. When someone reclaims their time, their energy, and their peace, the initial backlash can feel heavy. But if you remain consistent, something deeper emerges. Respect. Epictetus said it best. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. If you want others to treat you with consideration, it begins with how you treat yourself. That's the root of the iron mind, choosing discipline over approval, calm clarity over passive agreement. And here's a truth no one tells you. People may get upset when you change. They may call you selfish. They may say you've changed, and they'll be right, you have. But those who truly value you will adjust. When you start calmly saying, "That doesn't work for me," without apologizing, they'll learn. They may resist at first, but your consistency rewrites the script. The best part? You don't have to announce, "I want respect." You simply live as someone who respects their own time, their own energy, their own values, and the world follows suit. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. That's the path." So let me ask you, what have you been silently allowing that no longer serves you? What boundaries have you softened just to keep the peace? And what would your life look like if today, right now, you chose clarity over comfort? Respect isn't loud, it isn't begged for, it's felt. And when you carry yourself with intention, grounded in stoic strength, you don't demand respect, you radiate it. That's one of the most liberating lessons Stoicism has taught me. When you begin applying it, you'll notice you don't need to chase validation anymore. The world will begin responding to the real you, quiet, unwavering, and fully in command. Remember once walking into a room, saying nothing, and realizing I was being heard. There are moments in life where words lose their power, where explanations fall flat, where kindness is mistaken for weakness. That's when silence becomes necessary, not the silence of bitterness, but the silence of self-respect. A silence that is deliberate, a silence that protects. Timely absence is a form of power. We grow up being told that when we're disrespected, we must speak up, fight back, prove ourselves. But I've learned the paradox. The more you try to force respect, the smaller you appear in their eyes. True power sometimes comes not when you push back, but when you withdraw, not as punishment, but as protection for your energy and your dignity. I think of Anna, a woman who spent years being the glue for her friendships. She was always the one checking in, sending thoughtful messages, organizing birthdays, making sure everyone else felt remembered. Until one day she realized no one did the same for her. She wasn't appreciated, only expected. So she stopped calling, stopped texting. She withdrew into silence. And in that absence, people began to feel the void. At first, they were confused. Then came the guilt. Slowly, they started looking for her, not out of habit or obligation, but because they finally realized her presence had been a gift that was now gone. That's one of the deepest Stoic truths. Silence can teach lessons that words never could. When you walk away from places where you're not respected, you don't owe anyone an argument or a dramatic goodbye. What you need is discipline. What you need is silence. That's emotional intelligence in action. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "True strength is when you have the power to hurt someone but choose not to." And in an age where reaction is the instinct, restraint becomes an art. That art lies in the way people feel your presence, even when you are no longer there. Presence, when cultivated, carries more weight than eloquence. Picture this. A man sits in a meeting. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't fight to prove himself. But when he finally does speak, just one sentence, the room falls silent. Not because the words themselves are extraordinary, but because his energy had already spoken before his voice ever did. His silence wasn't emptiness, it was self-respect, self-mastery, and the quiet standard he held himself to. When you master presence, people begin to adjust around you. They stop interrupting you. They lower their voices. They start to respect boundaries you never even had to spell out. And it's not because you threaten them, it's because they can feel you have nothing to prove. That's the invisible authority Stoicism gives you. So how do you build it? First, know your worth. When you stop chasing validation, you'll walk into any room with a calm that's rare and magnetic. Second, Cultivate composure, especially when people expect you to react. Stillness is power. Third, create invisible boundaries by withdrawing from those who don't value you. Don't waste your breath on threats or lectures. Let your distance make the statement. And finally, don't try to be seen. Become someone who can't be ignored, not because you shout, but because you are unshakable. Epictetus put it plainly. It's not what happens to you that disturbs you, it's how you perceive it. Self-control is the foundation of powerful presence. You don't need to raise your voice to command respect. You just need to walk with quiet strength, steady eyes, and an unshaken heart. That alone sends the strongest message. I know who I am, and I don't need anyone's permission to exist that way. Let your absence speak to the value of your presence, because when you're no longer around to be taken for granted, the world is forced to face the truth. They've lost something not easily replaced, and by then you'll already be somewhere else quieter, higher, worthier. That is your silent power, and that is how you command respect, not through noise, not through arguments, but through presence, through quiet boundaries, through unwavering self-worth. When your silence comes from clarity, not fear, it becomes your most powerful weapon. You've walked the path from tolerating disrespect to becoming someone it cannot touch. Now it's time to live it. No more convincing. Just embody it. And if this message resonated with you, stay with me, because next we're going to uncover something even more practical. 10 quiet actions that make people respect you instantly. These are the silent moves that shift how people see you without a single word. Don't miss it. These are the moves that will quietly transform the way others treat you, not through force, not through manipulation, but through an undeniable presence that speaks louder than any words ever could. By the end of this journey, you won't just be hoping others will respect you, you'll know how to make them respect you. Let's begin with one of the most powerful foundations, self-reliance. There is a quiet, unshakable power in a man or a woman who does not crave validation. When such a person enters a room, their presence alone commands respect, not because they're arrogant, not because they try to dominate, but because they carry something far rarer, a confidence rooted in themselves, not in the approval of others. People are trapped in an endless loop of seeking validation. They crave reassurance, they fear being disliked, they obsess over fitting in, and little by little, that dependency weakens them. It makes them prisoners of opinions they can't control. The truly strong, however, build their foundation from within. Marcus Aurelius captured this paradox perfectly. I am constantly amazed that we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Think about that. We already hold ourselves closest, yet we live as if strangers' judgments carry more weight than our own. Respect, however, doesn't come from how others label you. It comes from whether you respect yourself enough to live without constant approval. Picture two individuals in the workplace. The first desperately seeks recognition. He over-explains every idea, waits anxiously for applause, and crumbles at the first hint of criticism. The second speaks calmly, contributes without fanfare, and works with steady focus. He doesn't beg for attention because he already knows his worth. Who draws more respect? Always the second, because people admire those who don't need them. Their self-reliance is magnetic. Take Daniel, for example, a young entrepreneur. At 38, he had built his company from scratch. While his peers chased social media clout, obsessed over likes, and begged for validation, Daniel focused inward. He trusted his own judgment, worked in silence, and made decisions without being swayed by the noise of the crowd. Years later, when his business flourished, the same people who once dismissed him came back seeking his guidance. He hadn't changed, he had simply remained steady while the world spun itself dizzy. His self-reliance outlasted their noise. That's the essence of self-respect, trusting your path without needing a chorus of approval to keep you moving. And self-reliance doesn't mean shutting the world out or becoming isolated. It means standing firmly in your authentic self. It means being guided more by your values than by external applause. So how can you begin building it? First, loosen your grip on external validation. Try living a full day without checking likes, fishing for compliments, or waiting for others to reassure you. Trust that your decisions are enough. Second, embrace solitude. Take a long walk without distractions. Journal a few lines. Sit in silence and listen to your breath. When you find peace within, the outside noise loses its grip. Third, make decisions concisely. Instead of over-explaining yourself, practice saying what you mean in one clear, firm sentence. People respect brevity. It signals confidence. Finally, carry the Stoic mindset. You control your actions, not the perceptions of others. When this truth becomes second nature, you are no longer bound by the shifting winds of approval. In the end, respect is never given to those who chase it. It is given to those who carry themselves as if they already possess it. The world watches the self-reliant because there is something irresistibly compelling about a person who lives with unapologetic passion and quiet certainty. That is the first silent move of power, and once you learn it, everything else begins to change. You've seen it before, the unmistakable spark in someone's eyes when they speak with conviction. Their presence doesn't ask for respect, it attracts it. Why? Because passion is magnetic. It's an invisible force that pulls people in, captures attention, and makes others feel something powerful. Truly passionate people don't chase admiration. They become impossible to overlook. Your thoughts shape your energy, and your energy shapes how the world experiences you. A life without passion is like running on autopilot, empty conversations, half-hearted enthusiasm, a presence that blends into the background. But when you live with fire, when you believe deeply and express it fully, people feel it. They may not always understand it, but they're drawn to it instinctively. Think of the greats, artists, leaders, warriors, inventors. None of them lived halfway. Their passion was undeniable, and it was that energy, not just their talent, that made the world stop and pay attention. Yet many people go through life never discovering what truly drives them. They settle for what's easy, safe, or socially acceptable. But if you want to command effortless respect, you must live with fierce conviction. So how do you find your flame? Notice what energizes you. When do you feel most alive? What conversations make you lose track of time? That energy is a compass. It points toward what matters most to you. Follow it. Stop seeking external approval. If something excites you, pursue it even if no one else understands. The world doesn't need more copies. It needs the fullest expression of you. Commit, don't dabble. Passion isn't only about enjoyment. It's about showing up consistently. The more you challenge yourself, the deeper your passion grows. Live in alignment with your values. If your daily actions contradict your beliefs, your inner fire will dim. Align your choices with what you stand for, and your energy becomes unshakable. I'm reminded of a young man who played guitar on the street. He wasn't famous, didn't have money, but when he played, crowds gathered. His passion was so raw and authentic that even strangers stopped to listen. One day, a businessman asked him, "Why do you play as if the whole world is watching?" The guitarist smiled and said, "Because to me, this is the whole world." Within a year, he was discovered by a producer. He didn't chase recognition, he didn't need to. His passion spoke louder than any advertisement ever could. To live with passion is to deliberately step into the orbit of what sets your soul on fire. Surround yourself with people who glow when they speak of what they love. Their energy will ignite yours in ways no book or lecture can. And just as importantly, have the courage to cut out what drains you. Whether it's a job, a relationship, or a habit, anything that dims your flame is too costly. Energy is your most valuable resource. Don't squander it on exhaustion. And perhaps most importantly, don't wait for permission. Don't wait for applause. Passion doesn't require validation. It requires courage. People aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to realness. To those who dare to burn. To those who dare to be different. To those who radiate their truth, unapologetic ally. So ask yourself, do you want to be a dim candle, safe, predictable, forgettable? Or do you want to be a flame so fierce that no one can ignore it? Because here's the truth. Words are cheap. We live in a world overflowing with empty promises, bold claims, and endless talk of discipline, respect, and success, yet very little embodiment of those ideals. Respect isn't earned by talking about your values. It's earned by living them. Think about the people you admire most. Is it because of what they say, or is it because of what they do? Actions don't just matter more than words. They define you. They become your legacy. When people see you consistently show up, day after day, something powerful happens. They begin to trust you. They begin to respect you. They no longer need convincing because your actions already speak louder than any argument ever could. But when your words and actions don't align, respect doesn't leave with a bang. It erodes quietly, piece by piece, until there's nothing left to stand on. Epictetus said it plainly. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. In other words, stop telling people who you are. Show them. The strongest person in any room is rarely the loudest, not because they lack confidence, but because they don't need to convince anyone of their value. Their presence alone makes the statement. Think of two employees at the same company. The first is always talking about how hard he works, how late he stays, and how much he deserves the next promotion. The second simply does the work quietly, diligently, without complaint, over time, who earns genuine respect. It's not the one shouting about effort. It's the one whose results make noise without him ever saying a word. Living with integrity means aligning your actions with your values. That begins not with temporary goals, but with lasting standards. Goals can change as life changes, but standards are who you are. When you live by principle, every action becomes a reflection of what you believe, not just a means to reach a target. So promise less and deliver more. Real value lies not in what you say you'll do, but in the silent results you create. All boasting becomes unnecessary, because the most powerful truths are those you don't have to announce. Others notice them anyway. Don't make excuses for delay or failure. Honesty with yourself is the foundation of self-respect. Keep the small promises tight. Be on time. Keep your word. Follow through on commitments. These are the small links that, when chained together, form the unbreakable trust of others. Choose your circle wisely. Surround yourself with people who live by their actions, not by slogans. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, each morning ask yourself, today I will meet interference, ingratitude, arrogance, deceit, jealousy, and irrationality, for they are all ignorant of good. With that awareness, you no longer get swayed by the behavior of others. Instead, you remain steady in living by the standards you've chosen, not to impress anyone, but because that's who you are. Live like a monument, not a billboard. Billboards scream for attention, desperate to be noticed. Monuments stand tall, in silence, respected, admired, enduring, not because they ask for it, but because they are worthy of it. Be a monument. Passion, presence, and principle are not just ideas you carry in your head. They radiate through your body. Before you ever speak, you've already said something. Your body language reveals what words can't. Your posture, your gaze, the way you carry yourself in a room. People are constantly reading you, often without realizing it. Confident body language is one of the most powerful tools you have. A strong stance commands attention. A steady gaze conveys certainty. Even a simple nod can communicate trust. On the other hand, weak body language slouching, avoiding eye contact, shrinking yourself signals uncertainty, insecurity, and fragility before you've spoken a single word. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." What he didn't add, but what modern science confirms, is that your body shapes those very thoughts. Studies show that when you stand tall, you don't just appear more confident, you feel more confident. When you shrink and hunch, your brain follows, making you feel weaker and more doubtful. Your mind and body are always in conversation. Mastering body language isn't just about how others see you. It's about how you begin to see yourself. And when you align both your actions, your values, and your physical presence, you become impossible to ignore. Powerful body language isn't about puffing out your chest or acting aggressive. True presence doesn't come from tension. It comes from calm, intentional energy. It begins with posture. When you stand tall or sit upright, shoulders relaxed, feet grounded, you don't just look stable, you radiate inner control. Eye contact is another subtle yet potent tool. Hold someone's gaze just 1 second longer than feels natural. Don't be the first to break it. That small act alone signals presence, certainty, and self-assurance. Even your gestures speak. Slow, deliberate hand movements with open palms create trust and invite natural persuasion. They show steadiness and honesty, while frantic or fidgeting motions reveal nervousness. But here's the key: what makes body language powerful isn't only the external signals, it's the inner shift behind them. Stoic mindfulness helps you. Catch yourself when you begin to slip into insecurity. A slouch, a fidget, a darting glance. The Stoic mind notices these patterns and calls you back to composure. Seneca once wrote, "A man is as miserable as he believes himself to be." The same applies to confidence. Act like a strong person, and in time, you become one. You can even practice this deliberately. Stand in front of a mirror and adjust your posture until it feels natural. Walk into a room in silence and pause for a few seconds before speaking. Notice how your presence fills the space. Try holding eye contact with a stranger for 5 seconds. Longer than you're comfortable with it will stretch your threshold for calm confidence. In a world overflowing with empty talk, your silent presence says everything that needs to be said. And yet, there's another layer of power even deeper than body language. Boundaries. Respect is not demanded, it's commanded. And one of the strongest ways to command respect is by holding quiet, unshakable boundaries. Not through shouting, not through emotional outbursts, but through wordless certainty that you will not be crossed. Boundaries are not about controlling other people, they're about defining yourself. They are the invisible lines that protect your time, your energy, and your peace of mind. When you set a boundary, you don't need to explain yourself. You don't owe anyone a long-winded justification. Real boundaries are felt, not debated. A self-respecting person doesn't need to announce, "I don't accept disrespect." It's already obvious in their actions. They walk away when necessary. They exit toxic conversations. Without a scene, they refuse to over-explain. That kind of silence carries more weight than any argument ever could. Imagine this. You're in a conversation, and someone repeatedly interrupts you. A person without boundaries will fight to reclaim space, desperate to be heard. But someone with boundaries doesn't scramble. They simply stop talking. They let the room fall awkwardly silent. They might give a subtle, knowing smirk, and when they finally do speak again, their words are slow, deliberate, undeniable. The message is clear. I'm not someone you interrupt. Or take another example. Someone in your life constantly disrespects your time-canceling plans at the last minute, always showing up late. The average response is to complain, argue, or plead for better treatment. But a person with strong boundaries doesn't explain. They simply stop making plans with that person. Quietly, consistently, the message is loud without ever being spoken. That is the silent power of someone who knows their worth. You're not angry. You're not begging to be treated better. You simply remove your presence, and over time, one of two things will happen. Either they begin to respect your time, or they drift out of your life. Either way, you win. This is the essence of reinforcing boundaries without words. Silence itself is a response. Not every insult deserves a reply. Sometimes the most powerful move is no reaction at all. When someone pushes against your limits, let the silence hang heavy. Let them feel the discomfort, not you. A pause can carry more weight than a long speech. Walking away is often stronger than arguing. Arguments waste energy, but silence preserves it. If someone disrespects you, you don't owe them an essay of justification. Just end the conversation. Close the door. Your absence becomes the loudest statement you'll ever make. This is Stoicism in action, the power of inner boundaries. The Stoics believe that peace comes from controlling what you can and ignoring what you can't. Seneca advised, associate with people who will make you a better person. Welcome those you yourself can improve. In other words, protect your space. If someone drains your energy, undermines your peace, or distracts you from your purpose, they don't belong in your circle. A strong person doesn't need to announce their boundaries. They simply live them. And by living them, they silently teach others how to treat them. Respect begins the moment you stop begging for it. When you establish quiet, unshakable boundaries, people feel it. And those who don't, they slowly fade away, leaving you with exactly what you need, peace. And here's another truth. Change is inevitable. You can resist it, fight it, cling desperately to what feels safe, or you can accept it, adapt to it, and turn it to your advantage. The people most respected in life aren't those who fear change. They're those who master it. Most people resist change because it threatens their sense of control. They crave certainty, stability, familiarity, but life doesn't work that way. Life is movement. Seasons shift. People evolve. Circumstances change in an instant. Those who cling too tightly to what should be are the ones who break when reality moves on without them. Imagine two people suddenly losing their jobs. The first panics. They sink into frustration, paralyzed by self-doubt. The second takes a deep breath, sees an opening for new skills, fresh opportunities, and unexpected paths. Which one earns more respect? Which one moves further? It's not the strongest who survive change, it's the most adaptable. When life throws you into chaos, you have two choices. Waste energy resisting what you cannot control, or focus on what you can control and move forward. So how do you train yourself to embrace change like a Stoic? Accept first, then act. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Instead of treating obstacles as walls, view them as guides. Detach from outcomes. The root of suffering isn't change, it's clinging to how you thought things should be. Practice letting go of rigid expectations. Adapt to reality, not to your imagined version of it. Pause before reacting. When change strikes unexpectedly, don't let emotions dictate your next step. Slow down. Breathe. Observe with logic, not fear. Ask yourself, what is the best next move I can take right now? Reframe change as a beginning. Every major transformation feels uncomfortable at first. Instead of saying, this is the end, remind yourself, this is the start of something new. Change is not your enemy. Resisting it is. When you learn to bend with life instead of breaking against it, you embody one of the deepest Stoic lessons. Strength is not in clinging, it is in adapting with clarity and calm. This is the beginning of something better. That's the Stoic mindset. Every change, no matter how uncomfortable, can be reframed as an opening, not an ending. Change itself becomes a quiet power move. People admire those who remain steady in uncertainty, the ones who don't flinch when the ground shifts beneath them. The person who adapts, who sees every setback as a setup for something greater, commands respect, because ultimately the world doesn't stop for anyone. You either flow with it or you get left behind. And flowing with life requires courage in places most people avoid. One of the most important, learning to say no Most people are afraid to say no. They fear rejection, conflict, or disappointing others. But here's the truth. The most respected people in the world know when to say no, and they do it without guilt, without apology, without hesitation. Because every time you say yes to something that drains you, distracts you, or disrespects your values, you are silently saying no to yourself. Saying no isn't rudeness, it's clarity. It's the signal that you've chosen to prioritize what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius captured it perfectly. If you seek peace, do less, or more precisely, do only what's essential. Saying no is how you streamline your life and preserve your most precious asset, your energy. To say no with strength, remember, you don't owe anyone a long explanation. A simple, calm, "I can't commit to that," is enough. Respect begins with your own. If you constantly nod along to please, you'll be exploited. But if you draw clear lines, others learn to honor your space. Define what you will never compromise: your values, your time, your peace. If something violates those, the answer must be no without hesitation, without guilt. Look around your workplace. The employee who dares to decline unreasonable demands is often more respected than the one who says yes to everything, only to crumble under the weight of it all. In relationships, the person who knows when to decline, who says, "I need rest," instead of always giving in, is more deeply valued than the one who endlessly sacrifices. And in personal growth, every no to distraction becomes a yes to discipline, a yes to progress, a yes to the life you're building. Time is your most precious asset. If you don't protect it, others will spend it for you. And the world ultimately respects those who have the courage to live honestly with themselves. Nothing signals that more clearly than a firm, unapologetic no. But there's another layer of strength tied closely to this. Pride. Not the arrogant kind that puffs itself up, but a quiet pride that lives beneath the surface. Pride is complex. Too little, and people will walk all over you. Too much, and you become off-putting, inflated, and empty. But the kind of pride that earns deep respect isn't loud, boastful, or arrogant. It's quiet, it's stable. It doesn't need to announce itself because it doesn't need recognition to exist. Many confuse arrogance with confidence, but the two are worlds apart. Arrogance is noisy. It constantly tries to prove something. It craves applause. It feeds off comparison and collapses the moment attention fades. Quiet pride, on the other hand, doesn't need clapping. It knows its value. It doesn't obsess over appearing strong because it already is strong. Marcus Aurelius put it simply: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Real pride doesn't boast. It doesn't argue. It simply exists, quiet. Pride is built on self-mastery, discipline, and self-reliance. When you control your emotions, your actions, and your words, something powerful happens. Inner belief replaces the craving for outside approval. A person with quiet pride doesn't brag. They don't justify themselves. They walk with certainty, act with integrity, and let their presence do the talking. They compare themselves only to who they were yesterday, not to the noise of others. They measure progress by their own growth, not by external validation. And that is why they command respect without demanding it. They respect others, but they never sacrifice self-respect. That's the balance you must master. Own your power quietly. When you walk into a room, don't try to earn respect, carry it with you. When you know your worth, you don't need to convince anyone. People feel it. And because they feel it, they respect it. Every time you say no to something that drains you, you're saying yes to your worth. You're affirming that your time, energy, and peace are valuable. Comment, "My time," if you're done overcommitting and finally ready to protect your peace. Because owning your time is one of the greatest acts of self-respect. Let your no speak for you. In a world flooded with information, opinions, and hidden agendas, one of the quietest and most powerful actions you can take is to develop a skeptical mind. Not a cynical one, but a sharp, questioning, awake mind. Skepticism doesn't mean rejecting everything. It means creating a pause before you accept something as truth. Most people accept information at face value. They follow advice, chase trends, believe the stories they're told, and rarely stop to ask, is this true? Who benefits if I believe this? What's being left out? But the ability to question is a silent weapon. It protects you from manipulation, deceit, and wasted energy. Epictetus gave a timeless example. If someone tried to sell you a rotten fish, you'd refuse. So why accept every opinion or claim without checking it first? Skepticism isn't just defense. It's how you remain in charge of your beliefs and therefore your life. Blind belief drains your energy. It locks you in meaningless debates, makes you reactive to every headline, and leaves you vulnerable to anyone confident enough to speak loudly. But when you cultivate the habit of questioning, you protect your mental focus. You make decisions based on reason, not impulse. And people respect those who can't be easily swayed, because not just anyone can move them. To sharpen your skepticism, practice these quiet habits. Pause before reacting. When you hear shocking news, resist the urge to react immediately. Ask, what's the source? Is there evidence? Follow the motives. Every trend, campaign, or promise has someone benefiting behind it. If you want truth, follow who profits. Look for contradictions. When things don't add up, dig deeper. Dishonest people often reveal themselves through inconsistency. Challenge your own beliefs. Don't just question the world, question yourself. Do I believe this because it's true or because it comforts me? A smart skeptic doesn't rush. They move slowly, but they move correctly. That's why a skeptical investor avoids bubbles. A skeptical employee sees through empty promises, and a skeptical individual resists social pressure. They are not pawns of the crowd. They are independent thinkers. And here's the paradox. When you stop being led, you begin to lead. But leading isn't only about speaking. In fact, one of the rarest and most commanding skills is knowing how to truly listen. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, very few know how to listen. Most are just waiting for their turn to reply, half hearing the words while rehearsing their response. The strongest, calmest, most influential people listen differently. They listen fully. They listen with presence. When you do that, you don't just hear words, you hear emotion, intention, and sometimes what was left unsaid. That's power, quiet power. The kind that makes people feel safe, respected, and connected. Active listening isn't a gimmick, it's a discipline. It requires full attention, focused eyes, a grounded mind, no phone buzzing in the background. When you are truly present, people feel it. They sense that you're not just waiting for your turn, you're giving them space to be real. And in that space, trust is built. Respect deepens. And you learn things no amount of talking could ever teach you. Contradictions and emotional layers always reveal themselves if you truly listen. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to be the smartest. You only need to be the best listener. Epictetus reminded us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. Listening is restraint. It is wisdom. It is humility. And those are all core Stoic values. Marcus Aurelius added another timeless reminder. Be selective about what you absorb. You don't need to hold on to everything you hear, just what truly matters. So how do you practice active listening in a way that commands respect? Start with presence. Put the phone away. Look the other person in the eye. Pay attention not just to words, but to gestures and expressions. Listen to understand, not to reply. Don't interrupt. Let them finish. And when they're done, pause. Before responding, that pause makes your answers deeper, more thoughtful. Reflect their words. Use phrases like, so you're saying, or it sounds like you feel. This shows that you're not just hearing, you're understanding. Read between the lines. Notice the pause, the shift in tone, the eyes looking away. Sometimes what isn't said reveals more than what is. Embrace silence. Most people fear silence, but those with presence use it as a tool. A well-timed pause gives others space to think and gives you subtle control over the conversation. Master this, and you'll discover something powerful. People begin to lean toward you. They'll trust you. They'll respect you. Because you're not just listening, you're giving them the rare gift of being understood. True power has never been loud. It is quiet. It is intentional. It is deeply present. And these 10 silent moves aren't tricks or tactics. They're a way of living. They root you in discipline, depth, and clarity. They strip away the noise so you can walk with purpose. And when you live with purpose, you stop chasing respect. You quietly earn it. If today's message resonated with you, take the first step now. Choose just one silent move and apply it. See how the world responds when you act with calm, quiet strength. Remember, mastering yourself is a process. And this is only the beginning. Thank you for walking through this journey with me. Your silence, your presence, your calm boundaries, they are not weaknesses. They are your greatest strengths. Now I want to hear from you. Which silent move will you start practicing today, saying no, walking away, or listening more? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're ready to master yourself even further, check out our playlist, StoicCraft. Silent power, lasting respect. Your next step toward living with unshakable calm and influence.